Scions of the Southland for a rare Wednesday, but for good reason. It's been a long time coming, but we finally have the Georgia Tech Athletic Director, Ryan Alpert, here to chat with us about some high-level stuff that's been going on in his first year at Georgia Tech. Ryan, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me today, guys.
Uh, First thing, congrats on making it a year. I think we've all been very happy to see the work that's been going on just on the fan and every alumni side. And you mentioned some stuff that you accomplished with Demetri yesterday in your own pod. But I was curious, is there a lofty goal that or a stretch goal that y'all hit in the last year or got really close to that you may not have expected you were going to get to?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it was a great year. I mean, certainly happy for the accomplishments of making it a year personally, but none of it would have been possible without our athletes, our coaches, our staff, the fans, the buy-in of the students. I think was a huge piece this year. I mean, I think back to I remember sitting in the tunnel. We obviously won the close game at Colorado. We come
Yeah.
back and we've got that our home opener and the rain hit and right before the game we had to evacuate the stadium, which was never fun,
Yeah.
but you have to do to keep everybody safe. And then 7,000 students came pouring in back into the stadium, and so for me, some of the things that the lofty goals was I think you build a fan base and you build crowds and engagement and experience through your students. And so to see, I remember looking over and Brent Jones, my deputy AD, was standing there. I said, "Man, we can really build something
Yeah.
with the excitement." And obviously that was not because of me; they were coming there, but the players, what Coach Key had built, and then to go on to see the overall student attendance and engagement and the fan support and selling out multiple games at Bobby Dodd last year was incredible, and then seeing that support into basketball, but certainly where our students were for baseball. And then,
Yeah.
a couple of other major highlights. We have in this environment of college sports, you have to grow revenue. So to grow the revenue year over year and set a revenue record of, I think we announced 12%. It may even actually be higher as we're kind of going through closing the books for last year. But so the growth in revenue, student engagement, our fan engagement. I think the what we've been able to do in game, trying to make that experience, and then we are never going to compromise who we are academically. So to have all the successes on the field, I think so much is getting lost in the current environment of college sports that these are still student athletes,
Yeah.
and having a 3.0 GPA across all sports, setting the record in football, men's basketball, and several of our sports. I think a lot of people thought when the House settlement happened and revenue share started and players were going to get paid, would that compromise the ecosystem of higher ed? And again, I can't speak for other places, but I can speak for Georgia Tech. It hasn't. You can drop our students in the middle of campus and they know where the institute buildings are. They're in class and they're participating and doing really well academically. And then to achieve so much athletically and what we did in baseball and all of volleyball making the NCAA tournament for
Yeah.
6 straight years and golf. And so to have all the academic success partnered with athletic and revenue was something that was really important to me. And the 58 or 57 sellouts credit our fan base for showing up and showing out there.
Yeah. I think keeping Georgia Tech, and making even more of it is absolutely where this has gone, and that's been really fun to just see develop and grow in that regard. So yeah, that makes I like that. Actually, what you got?
I wanted to dig into talking a little bit about the game day experience, especially with football season coming up here. We've talked a lot, especially on this podcast with Andy Demetri yesterday, about those 100 game day improvements that are coming to Bobby Dodd Stadium at Hyundai Field later this fall. How did that concept come about? I know that there was some sort of senior design involvement with the school the school of ISYE as well. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess how the root of that, I was at Derek Schiller, who's the president of the Braves, has been who's somebody who doesn't have to pick up the phone and call Ryan Alpert, the AD at Georgia Tech. But among all the professional sports leaders in this community, they've leaned into me and poured into me about things that they're doing trend line wise and what they're doing fan experience, in game, premium.
Hmm.
But Derek had told me when they opened Truist Park at some point They engaged a senior project with ISYE on gate flows, concessions, how you set up lines, how you structure. I mean, exactly what you think a industrial engineer
Right.
student could really do. And we engage them. And look, as you build crowds, if Bobby Dodd's 50 plus thousand seats, when you have 25 or 30,000 in the building, you don't really find your pressure points. And so as we started to build crowds and the sellouts that we had, and I'd say both from the football season and concerts, you really start
Yeah,
seeing,
true.
and we're landlocked in, and we don't have sprawling land like where you go to a lot of stadiums and there's open parking lots and open land outside their stadium. We're in Midtown Atlanta, so we have some real constraints. We have an older building. So how can we, without spending $300-400 million to go rip out walls and re-pour the stadium and redo the whole, rebuild Bobby Dodd, which is not something we're looking to do.
Right.
How can we make, systemic improvements for our fan experience as we continue to grow our season ticket base and bring people into our stadium? We need to shorten the lines, improve our security process, add better technology to, improve our scan rates, shorten the lines and concessions. That not only helps you improve revenue because your throughput's higher, which means your per caps are going to grow, but really, it's about getting people out of their seat to the concession line and bathrooms and then back to watch the game. And so,
Yep.
so ISYE came in, they did an incredible job, and gave us a significant amount of recommendations that we're gonna, and again, you can't take you can't eat a whole apple with one bite, right? So we're
Right.
trying to take bites of the apple of things that we know we can improve on. And again, everything's not going to be perfect. We're going to, implement a lot of changes going into this year, and I'm sure some of them will be really effective, and some of them will need refinement. But that's kind of our team's goal is to set out and how we can, and some of that is logistics, but some of that is
Right.
investing more in the game day experience, more if you're in our staff meetings, I want more boom, more bang, more fireworks, more because we're in the entertainment business, right? Coach
Yeah.
Keith's in charge of developing a very competitive football program, and we're here to develop and enhance the game day show, if you will. And what does that show look like? And how do we continue to modernize and advance the game day experience here at Bobby Dodd?
I think playing off of that, especially talking about the game day experience and more of that energy, making it a real sort of a big event in town. Are there any lessons, or how much of the lessons from the recent World Cup are you integrating into that newly revamped game day experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't get a vote, but I think Atlanta should win best host city, no question. I think Dan
Absolutely.
Corso
Yeah.
and that team and everybody poured into, I think I remember him saying it, they put the bid in 4 or 5 years ago, and everything that went into making Atlanta the best host site they did. And part of that was the fan zone. Part of that was how they managed the stadium. And Mercedes-Benz is, one of the classiest groups, and Tim Z and Doug
Yeah.
and that team have done an incredible job in how they've developed that stadium, how they transformed it to a soccer pitch, and so a lot of lessons learned. Actually, our chief of police, Chief Conley, who I think is the best in the business, he spends a lot of time. He works with the Final Four every year in setting up their security, and then also was a liaison with the World Cup, and so he's able to bring best practices, traffic flow,
Nice.
entrance, egress, and how we manage those things here. And look, we have one of the best things about Mercedes-Benz. It was designed and built, and it's new, and we don't have those same structural advantages. But how can
Right.
we take the concepts, and one of the things we're looking at doing, and we actually have a walkthrough tomorrow, is how, if you can extend your perimeter out a little bit, it allows for more space to do your security checkpoints, to do your scanning and your throughputs into your stadium.
Right.
And so we are taking, and that's one of the best thing in college athletics is we don't have to invent. So you can beg, borrow, and steal great ideas from whether it's the pros or other teams and see how they're doing it.
Yeah. We're real lucky to have those teams specifically down the road that we can learn from and take in
Yeah.
so many different things from. So that's really cool. On the financial front, I know financially it seems like the landscape changes possibly by the hour, depending on what headlines you're reading at this point. But for Tech's situation, what have been big priorities in terms of revenue generation, or just how to maintain a financial foothold in college athletics, knowing that it seems to just be getting more and more expensive to be competitive at the level that we want to be competitive at?
Yeah, we should be feverishly refreshing X to see what Ross Dellin was saying is coming out of the
Exactly.
College Sports Act. But yeah, I mean, revenue generation is key and critical. You've heard me say it, ever since I took this job, and was saying it before, and where I was, at Tennessee was, revenue generation and investing in your programs. There's never been a closer tie to revenue and success than there is today in college sports. So if we are satisfied with where we are, and we're not going to create more revenue, we're probably going to take a significant step backwards. So
Right.
how do we take and I call it self-generated revenue. And so, even though I came up in fundraising, I think again, the places I've been and the people I've learned from have been able to create really dynamic revenue generating machines. And so, we look at it in a multi-prong approach. So I'll start in no particular order. You certainly always have your philanthropy, so your donations that are coming in that, getting, tax deductions, investing, whether that's capital, whether that's outright gifts for sports specific areas. We had one we announced of a matching gift for baseball scholarships because of the House settlement. You now can, you went from 11.7, max scholarships in baseball to now you can provide a max of 34. So the philanthropy is a key and critical role. Our tech fund, which is our seat related giving, several years ago, they took away the tax 80/20 tax deductibility. But with every seat that we have in our stadiums, whether it's, O'Keefe to Bobby Dodd to McCamish to all of our stadiums, there's a tech fund associated amount tied to season tickets. So
Right.
how can you maximize and grow that? The renovations we're doing to Bobby Dodd are tied to fan experience, fan amenities, but also a premium enhancement. So how can we continue to generate more revenue out of our premium assets? Having concerts in Bobby Dodd is going to be something we do on a continual basis. So diversification of revenue growth, our multimedia rights sponsorships. How can we continue to engage the Atlanta business community and continue, our brand is as hot as it's ever been. Companies not only want to come and associate with Georgia Tech athletics, but they love recruiting Georgia Tech students. So how can we leverage that as an asset? Licensing is up significantly and something we're leaning into. And Under Armour has been a great partner in that. And how can we get more product in stores? How can we continue to innovate and modernize and create a cool brand where people want to buy our stuff? And winning helps there. If you look back at the schools that have produced the most licensing revenue for their institutions are traditionally the ones winning at a high level. So, it's no surprise last year we had a really great licensing year and with 9 wins in football and what we were doing in baseball and other sports that attributed to the success. So I think you have to be really good and dynamic in all of the areas of revenue.
Yeah.
You can't build an athletic department today on just philanthropy or just ticket sales. You really need to be dynamic in all of the areas, and I think that's one area or that's one sector that we've done a nice job in, is being able to grow all of our revenue streams.
Yeah.
Ryan, I know you got to go in a couple minutes here, but one last question for you. Um, Thinking about our non-revenue sports programs, and especially with the growth of women's athletics and the women's collegiate athletics, especially, and the growth of the WNBA in the last few years, and NWSL expansion to Atlanta in 2028. What do you think the future of women's sports looks like at Tech? Does that include more programs, better NIL infrastructure, more opportunities? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think right now programmatically we're in a really good spot from the number of sports that we support and sponsor at Georgia Tech. We're actually one of the rare enrollment numbers where we have more male traditional students than we do female, and a lot of that's
Right.
the engineering centered background that we have. So we're in a really good spot there. I think you're always monitoring the landscape and you're always looking to see what opportunities are out there. But from a sports standpoint, I think we're really set as of today. But as you mentioned, I think the female women's sport phenomenon is growing. There's huge growth in whether it's pro volleyball, pro basketball, as you mentioned. And so I think it's absolutely an area of growth and emphasis. And the revenue share, if this new increased cap comes with the College Sports Act, it's an area that we can continue to thrive in. I think the women's team in Atlanta has done a great job with how they've marketed. The crowds have been incredible, the environment
Yeah,
they've built there. And so I think and what Karen's done for us in year one of her program, she got hired late
absolutely.
in the process and kind of did a tremendous job hitting the transfer portal. I think she's really improved the roster this year, and I look for big improvements out of that program. But how can we continue that's the business community that I talk about all the time. There's a lot of synergies between the women's CEO and C-suite growth. How can we get those individuals and those companies to
Yeah,
invest in volleyball, women's basketball, softball, and look, those rosters you're not seeing those numbers like you are in football, men's basketball. So some significant NIL support or corporations coming in and backing some of our women's programs could have a huge turn and investment in those programs that could help us continue to be more competitive.
yeah. No, I think that would be a huge thing, and I know leveraging the city can be one of the biggest assets that Tech has to make that happen down the line. Ryan, thank you so much for hanging out with us and letting us pepper you with some questions that we've had for a while. Can't wait for seasons to start across the board here. So hopefully we'll see you on campus soon.
Yeah, us too. And we look forward to having you on campus and appreciate y'all having me on today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was Ryan. Some background that took about 10 months to get together, but hey, it finally actually happened. So really good to have him on here and ask some questions that I think we've been talking about for a long time. So Akshay, any like immediate takeaways before we sign off here about what we heard from Ryan?
I'm proud of us for keeping it tight. We had like a 15-minute window,
We really
and
did.
this is the first time that we've actually ever stuck to a time, and got really efficient. I'm proud of us for that. I think something that we were talking about before we started recording, and then before Ryan got on the horn, is that the idea of increasing that security footprint for the stadium is intriguing to me as someone that went like has obviously is in and around soccer and then went to a couple of World Cup games this year.
Yeah.
What FIFA put inside that security perimeter is a bunch more marketing activations, right? So
Yeah.
basically all of the so you scan in, you go through your security line, you scan your ticket, you get in, and then it's a fan fest, and
Yep.
then it's the stadium. So for example, I believe that the security perimeter at Mercedes-Benz, and I didn't go to a game at Mercedes-Benz, so I don't actually know, but I think it was as far back as International Plaza and maybe even further back than that.
That's what I heard is around there. Yeah. Something like that.
So think about that. So obviously some of that space is taken up by lines, but then you have, you know, let's say where College Game Day used to set up, rip, rest in peace,
Hmm.
over to the actual stadium gates. That's just for marketing partners, right?
Hmm.
So your Coca-Colas for FIFA specifically, it was the Coca-Colas, the Home Depots, the Bank of Americas. There was one broadcast booth, like Fox was obviously on
Hmm.
site at some of these stadiums. Like that's what you can stuff into that perimeter.
Yeah.
Um, that is intriguing to me. I think some of that, we've seen in the past, like hell of a block party. That's actually not inside the security perimeter,
No, but you
but
could totally imagine some of that turning into part of that. And also
right.
if the amount, the more you put inside that perimeter, that gives you better bang for your buck on your ticket than you probably were going to get otherwise, because now you have access to stuff that, yes, you're paying for, but you're getting more than just the football at that point.
I mean, yeah,
Which
you're
that's something.
also the other part here is that you scan in your ticket once you get to the stadium depot, and now you can't really leave, right?
That's true.
Like
That's true. Yeah. I mean that.
it's very difficult to leave, and so you can play around with that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that makes for a good environment on which you can pitch like marketing activations. You can
Right.
pitch more. Like I think one of the things that they talked about in that hell of a podcast yesterday was more point of sale, more
Yeah.
merchandise stands. make concessions outside of the stadium, like making sure that that
Yeah.
loop of getting you back in your seat, getting you from your seat to the concession stand to the bathroom, then back to your seat, that is a tighter loop,
Yeah.
right? I think these are all things that they could do to really improve that kind of experience. I think the financial strategy, like Ryan's comments on the financial strategy, I think if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, it shouldn't surprise you, but it's nice
No.
to hear that that is the stated goal of,
Yeah.
right? Like self-generating more revenue and
Yeah.
sort of make like not waiting for a TV deal to come in and make you whole,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But like controlling the controllables and making sure that you create your own position of strength. Obviously, it's different for a Tennessee or Georgia compared to Georgia Tech, just based on the fan base that you have. But in to his credit, the numbers and the increases in fundraising and different endowments don't necessarily lie here, right?
Right. Yeah.
So all in all, I think it was pretty impressive, and it was impressive of us to fit it in 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, we did the thing. I mean, obviously, slightly bummed that they were like, "Yep, we're good on the number of women's sports we have now because we're still waiting to fund the soccer team." But we can keep
Just wait
dreaming.
until they cap the connector, buddy.
We'll keep
Just
dreaming on
wait
that
until they
front.
cap the connector.
One day, baby. Well, I mean, hey, I mean, they're renovating Mercedes for women's soccer now. I mean, I don't think we'd fit 28,000 people in the stadium for that, but I mean, maybe 3,000, 4,000. I don't know. Who the hell knows? So.
You don't look. You don't want to be in there with 3,000
No, you
people in
don't.
there.
No, you
That
don't.
is
No, you
that is
don't.
a cavern
That thing.
without like
I've been
20,000 people in there.
I've been in there with 10 people in there, and you could carry a conversation across the length of the pitch with how empty that building can feel and how just echoey it gets. But so, anyways, thanks y'all for listening. We'll be back either this Sunday or the Sunday after, depending on how our schedules pan out. But hope y'all enjoy this, and you can catch us on fromtherumbleseat.com or from the if you have any questions for us or stuff to tell us that we should write about. FTRS blog is our Twitter and Blue Sky. I'm at Jack Nicholas. You can find me and Akshay's work at Game on Paper as well. Stuff's coming. What it is, I've already forgot. It actually told me beforehand, and I blanked out because of this freaking interview we just did. So, we'll see you all next week.